Hello, Greg Candido, Ugly Tuna here. And today is the hand history of the day. I have an interesting spot that came up. We are four-handed, and I believe this was in a tournament where top five got paid. So we pretty much just got into the money. I think that this payout is getting paid, not even your buy-in back, and pretty interesting spot. The blinds are right now 150, 300. And we have pretty aggressive villains over here. I masked their names. I won't. Uh, I masked their names for this video for the sake, but I will tell you, villain number one is a player that is a solid player. Um, he can be aggressive. Sometimes he doesn't like to find the fold button, and will not fold that easily. So, and tends not to believe me sometimes. And when he gets a piece, when he gets a piece, he tends not to let go. So when I do hit a hand, I try to value down. Villain number two, I forgot who that was, but villain number three was playing very aggressive. I think he was drinking that night because he was opening up pots very large, taking flips. He was just a pure maniac at the end. And we came up to this aggressive hand here. So let me take you through it. So the blinds are 150, 300 with a 40 ante. Let's get started over here. So I am in the small blind. So it gets folded to me in the small blind, and I have pocket threes. And could we raise here? Sure, we could. I just didn't want to bloat a pot with this villain being so short where I could ladder up as a little ICM situation here. So I raise? Sure, I could raise and fold. I just thought right now just kind of pretty much play it straightforward and in this spot, and I have no problems. Just I'm very indifferent here of raising or just calling. We have a good hand. We can play to set mine here and kind of just release, just check fold the flop if we come with three overs. If I am going to play this very aggressive, I will bet a rather large side because I'm in the small blind. I probably would make it. I wouldn't raise to 900. I probably would go to like 1,000 to 1,200, just because I'm out of position. I probably would want to take this pot right now. I mean, we can try to, and there's not a hand that you really want to see five cards unless you're the super short and you just want to take a flip with it. So that's why, because it's just a small pocket pair, I just elected to call in this spot. But if I was kind of just to take it down pre-flop, I probably would be the bet sizing would be 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 in that neighborhood. So I elected just to call, and the villain checks. So we have a limp pot, and we see a flop of Queen 4-8, and it's not a very good flop here. So I mean, I think the best option right now is to start with a check, which we do, and our villain checks back. And then we hit our Jing card on the turn, so we turn a set of threes. So now I think the most important thing you should be doing right now is try to be building a pot. Right now we have no idea. Our villain could have anything. It was a limp pot. It's hard to even put him on a range. I would say that if he had a queen, he would have bet the flop, so we can kind of rule out queens. Um, probably, probably. I mean, he could be playing sneaky and trappy. That if you flop top pair, especially when you get a dynamic blind versus blind, um, weird things happen. People be more deceptively there. So could he have a queen here? Absolutely. You know what I mean? And then maybe he has a queen with a crap kicker, and he just wants to maybe on the turn he'll start putting some chips into the pot. Because if I had, let's say, a hand like queen five or something like that, or queen nine, or something along those lines, I could easily check back the flop and then start betting the turn in the river, because it's kind of hard. You know, in case someone my opponent has queen 10, I'll kind of know. So let's do like a delay betting in this spot. But but in this case, it's kind of hard to rule out queens. Could he have a 4-8? Yeah, I just think that this villain would bet this flop if he had those hands, and especially the way this table is being very aggressive. So right now, I definitely think I have the best hand. So when you have the best hand, you want to start betting for value. So what would be a good bet for value here? I mean, he could have a backdoor straight draws and flush draws. So I'm not necessarily too much afraid of it in a heads up pot. I don't really, me personally, when I'm in a heads up pot, when I see a board that's flushing and straightening out over here, I'm not as concerned as if it was a three-way pot or a four-way pot when I see these draws, where now I know that, I don't think I can make a bet and get all those draws to fold. Against one opponent, well, now what happens if that flush does get there or that straight draw does get there and he bets? Now I can bring those hands in. All right, maybe he does have a flush or maybe he does have a straight, and he's just betting right now. Of course, that is definitely possible, but I tread that line very closely of falling off the cliff and falling onto the cliff. You just got to be able to understand your villain, your image, their image, and understand, be able to read a board and say, all right, I can fold these hands when I'm supposed to fold them. So in this case, we have our pocket three, set of three. So I think right now it went check, check on the flop. It was very passive up to this point between both of us. Both of us showed no interest. It's now time to build the pot. And, so I probably would start like with a half size bet, maybe somewhere around 350. On my Poker Stars account, I have it set, I think, 40%, 50%. So I'm probably either clicking between 40 and 50% here at the time. Again, I'm just reviewing this hand now, so I don't exactly remember exactly what I bet, but I would be surprised if I bet more or less than, let's say, I would say anywhere between 350 to 400 is okay. But I probably would, in this spot, because I want to get called right now, I probably would want something bet around 350. So I checked. I don't like that check. And actually, I'm kind of remembering now why I checked in this spot. Personally, now reviewing this, I don't like the check at all. I just think that we should be building, because just too many times your villain will check behind in this spot. But I did that in this spot. I did it for a reason. This villain can be very aggressive. I just think that when you get a board like this, that anytime it's checked on the flop and on the turn, this villain's always going to fire on the turn. And that was going through my mind at the time. So I am doing this for a reason. This is definitely not the optimum play. It's kind of a little bit of a trappy. I'm kind of in it. I probably would go for a check raise in this spot. And I'm really going to, if I do go for a check raise, I'm really telling him that I have a really strong hand. However, if this player does have a hand in here that my check raise, I don't think he'll fold to a check raise. I think I could probably get two streets. I could really start building a pot. So because this is villain specific, and I elected to go for a check raise in this spot, and but I wouldn't say most times. I think 80% of the time, 90% of the time, I'm usually firing here. If these were just random people, and I just got moved to a table and I didn't know anybody here, I'm absolutely betting half the pot here and starting to build a pot. But because I know this villain will bet that I'm almost, what I probably would say is that if there's a greater than 75 or 70% chance that this person will bet if I check to, I went for that. I just went for the check raise, and maybe we could just get the chips in there somehow. So I did check, and my villain did bet pretty much what I thought. And he elected to do a very large sizing. Now, I just think that, to me, that kind of feels a little bit bluffy. I mean, maybe he's just worried about maybe straight draws and flush draws. He does have something, and he has there. I mean, so right now it's very hard for me to range him. Now, if he is not bluffing, which he's definitely capable of bluffing, because pretty much I just check. I mean, there's no way I could fold here. I mean, that's just too weak the way I played a hand. Because the way I played a hand, there's just no way I could ever fold or raise to anything right now. And it's kind of hard to interpret that 750 chips when you check to him twice. So we limped pot, check on the flop. I mean, he could have anything, and it's just hard for me to get it. So I'm not really so much concerned what he has, because I definitely think I have the best hand. So if that being the case, I would stick to my plan here to do that. Now he did bet 750, which if he wasn't bluffing, what does 750 usually, right? With that bet sizing, it kind of tells me like he's betting a hand for protection, possibly against a flush draw or whatnot. And I ask myself in these hands that, sometimes I'll just put a guy, oh, I think he's bluffing. Well, I kind of now go through my decision-making tree. And one of the things that I've inserted in there is, if he wasn't bluffing, what is he representing? And that kind of helps me to determine what my best action is. So with this case, I just think that, because he's making a large sizing, he probably had some kind of one pair holding, and he is, you know, trying to protect his hand against some draws. Or you could have a monster too and play it this way and just trying to build a pot. Sometimes these villains are just oblivious to hand reading, and it is like, oh, I got a huge hand. Maybe I have a set of eights, and I'm just blasting in all my chips in the pot, and just don't understand it. So better players, you can kind of understand their bet sizing. But if I was just reading this in a vacuum right now, maybe the way you're reading it is that, okay, he has one pair holding and he's worried about some draws. So, okay, so now the thing is, what are we going to do here? And obviously, my plan all along was to go for a check raise. And if we're going to check raise, what should that sizing be? So I didn't, though because my villain doesn't have a tendency to fold, especially when he puts chips in the pot, I would probably elect to go bigger here, maybe like anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000. I mean, is that really big? I mean, a general raise I probably would bet here would probably be around 1,750, maybe 1,000 on top, or sometimes people go three times the bet, so which would be around 2,200. I just don't think I'm afraid if I bet 2,200 on that bigger side, that he probably will just fold one pair of holdings and say, if he has a pair of fours, he's fold. If he has a pair of threes, he probably just folding there. So what is the perfect balance where I can bet where he's only has what's the perfect balance where I can bet where I can definitely get him to call? And you got to find that pain threshold when you're balancing size your bets that, I don't mind a call right here. I'm not worried about flushes. I mean, he might be doing this with a flush draw, but I could just check call the river if it is a flush draw. Or if there is a straight card that comes up here, I could just check call here. I mean, it's kind of hard. He could have a hand like something like, 7-6, 5-6, or something like that. Maybe, and he's betting it. Maybe not. I mean, I'm going kind of with a one pair holding here. So if I'm going to size my betting, that will get one pair to call me. And I think probably the perfect bet is probably between 1,500 and 1,600 or something in that neighborhood. So let's see what I did. So I went to 1,643, which is perfect. I think that sizing is perfect here. Someone will probably get called. Now, granted, Villain 1 is not a spew donkey. He's a tight, aggressive player that doesn't like to fold. So there are a lot of players that I play with that are definitely just call down with bottom pair, second pair, middle pair. But in this spot, I just definitely felt that, I could probably get him to call just because he's going to be a little bit sticky here. So 1643 is probably the perfect amount that I think sees fit for this spot. So I make that bet and he just calls. So I'm loving the call. And before we see the turn card, I mean, if there is a flush, I'm probably going to barrel the flush. I mean, I'll probably just bet thin value for the river, no matter what falls. There's no river card that can come up here that I'm really scared of. So, and that's been the case, and I would just bet for thin value. And if I get raised, then, I'll take it from there and see who it is, if that flush does complete or not. So if you notice before we did this, I already planning what the river card is. So you should have a plan after you make a bet. Well, what do you do for future cards to come? So, and that's pretty much my bet. I mean, I don't think there's any card that could really stop me from betting, like check calling in this spot. I mean, there's never wherever folding, that's for sure. But I don't think there's any card, even a flush draw, or let's say like the 7 of hearts or the a 7 of diamonds or 6 of diamonds come where maybe that makes it a little bit scary. I mean, I probably don't want to see a 7, 6, or a 5 of diamonds. That would probably be the worst card that would come off the deck. But that probably wouldn't stop me from betting anyways, because if they raise me on top of that, I can either just call or fold. So flop comes as a 7. So if he has 5, 6 there, that would be pretty gross. So, but again, we have to see how it plays out. So obviously we're going to we want to bet for value here. And what would be the perfect bet for someone to call me, like, maybe with, a one pair holding that's still that same unproved one pair holding. So I think a bet maybe like, 2,000. I forgot what I did here, but I probably would say between 1,800 and 2,000. I think that would be, give me a call. I think anything more than that, one pair he might fold. I think, he'll get 2-1 on his money for one pair, so that wouldn't be bad. He only has to win 33% of the time there. So, but it's not like I want to go all in. I think one pair folds there. So I'm going to probably say that I probably should be betting anywhere between 18 and 2,000 here, maybe as high as 2,200, but I don't see him going that big. So I bet 1681. I think that's a little bit on the shorter side. I think I could have probably squeezed out another 200, at least go to 1800. But I guess I really went for thin value here. I figured, especially, when you're forehand on a final table in this spot now, if I win this pot, I'm like the chip leader here. And, this extra 1,600 chips means a lot. Not that this went through my mind, but, I really wanted a call here. And I don't want to fold. So even if I had to go smaller, get it, that would be more important. So, all right. So, again, my bet sizing here would definitely be on the smaller side. I mean, if I had to redo this again, I probably would want to go to 1,800. I don't think he folds 1,800. I kind of said that earlier. So, but in the heat of the moment, you play a little bit different. But I rather get called by 1,600 than 1,800 to fold. So I elected for a little bit of a smaller size. So we bet 1,800, and our villain raises us to 32-36. And I kind of at first kind of threw up in my mouth, and I'm just like, oh my God. I was like, are you serious? So after that has worn off, I had to kind of piece this together and see what is he repping here. So once a villain bets like in this spot, it goes to 32-36. I mean, he makes it really small. So first of all, I don't think his bet can ever get us to fold. I mean, you can see right over here, my poker tracker, we're getting 5 to 5 odds. We only need 15% to call. When you're getting 5 to 1, you only need 15% to call. I mean, that's definitely an easy call in that spot. However, when he makes that bet so small, he's repping huge value there. And the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, oh my God, does he really have 5-6 in this spot? So, now the question is, can you just fold if he's repping 5-6 or a bigger set or whatever it is? So in this spot, I go through my division tray. I go by, how many hands are we beating and how many hands we're losing. So obviously we have a set of 3, which is pretty good. So we lose to all other sets. So we lose any other sets, but we beat all 1-pair holdings and we beat all 2-pair holdings. So I just think that in this spot, 15%, I think this is an easy call for that. I mean, I did take a little bit of while. I was just like 5-6. Oh my God, gross. But I mean, if he turned some kind of 2-pair, maybe, he had like, I don't know. I mean, he kind of called, maybe he like had 8-7 and turned 2-pair on the river or something like that, or some kind of 2-pair holding. I just think that we get paid off on there. Now, once he raises up there, I think we could rule out 1-pair holdings, or and you can't have any kind of over-pair holdings. I mean, can you say, oh, someone had a pair of kings in a spot? Well, you could rule out kings, aces, and queens. I mean, queens or stuff like that. Or really, you could rule out a set of 4s and set of 8s too, because these are all hands that if he made, they're probably going to bet on the turn and start building a pot. He didn't do it until the river. So it smells like that he could have probably rivered, 2-pair, or was on his draw for 5-6. And, he called, I think I forgot going back, but you check the flop. And then, if you have 5-6, and then now you're open-ended, that's kind of sounds more realistic of a hand that he could have. Or, maybe he had a weak queen and turned queen 4, queen 8, queen 7. He turned kind of, the river, he made 2 pairs like a queen and a 7. I mean, we're beating all those kind of hands. So obviously we're not folding here, but this is just a spot that you want to think about it. And, some people say, oh, you got it. Well, you just got to figure out how many hands you're beating. Are you beating all those other hands? Is it possible the way the hand plays out? So you got to go in there. So like, give an example, like, does the villain ever have pocket 10s here? No, because he's probably betting a flop. I mean, he's probably raising pre-flop with pocket 10s, right? Or any pair, like even pocket 9s. I think my villain is good enough to raise there. So he doesn't have kings, jacks, or aces, you know what I mean? Or queens, because he would have raised pre-flop. So, I mean, maybe 9s is the only under pair that I would maybe not bet. Maybe he thinks his 9s are good. He had queens and 9s, and he called me down. So could he have queens and pair of 9s? Absolutely, as maybe as a 1-pair holding, or ace queen. But again, I think even ace queen would have raised. Queen jack, maybe a queen 10 or a weak queen he could have had. But so I don't want to beat the horse too much. But obviously we're going to call here. and he shows us queen seven. So he kind of nailed his two pair on the river, and we pretty much went from there. But it's kind of important that when you go through a hand like this, that was so critical that you just can't fold and want to do it. And hopefully you can understand, you know, when you get in these blind versus blind situations that, it's very tricky when you don't raise pre-flop to put people on hands even pre-flop, because I was up to the turn. I was clueless what this guy had. I just know that he could be very aggressive. He could try to take the hands away from me. He could definitely have some bluffs in his range and stuff like that. But you know, once we turned our set, we just have too much equity in his hand to fold. And the worst case scenario, I was check folding. I mean, could we warrant a raise on the river here? I mean, I just think that we're going to be getting called by worse, because when he bet raises the river, I think that villain always has two pair or better there. So hopefully this is the hand of the day. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any feedback, feel free to speak to me, and we'll see you next time.